because before I can get to saying it, they said, I said, I know I look like I'm 65, 70, 75. No, you don't. I said, that's why I don't tell you, because I'm none of those ages I call. I'm no 60, 65, no 70, 75. I'm above all of that. No, you ain't. I said, that's why I don't tell you. Because you said, no, you ain't. Lord, let me live until Wednesday. I'll be 85 years old.
Wow.
How about that? Y'all ready for me to go home?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, you talked about a dry cleaning operation on Terrace Street. You said it was a dry cleaning.
Yes.
And it's
Mr.
still-
Harris Laundry. It's a laundry.
It's a laundry.
Yes.
It's still operating.
Operating. I think it, yeah. I didn't hear him say it's going out of business. Harris. Yeah. I was just nice.
Do you think we could get some of the photographs you have and get those back to you? We could make copies of them. You said you had a lot of pictures.
3, 2, 1, action.
Today is February 14th, 1998. My name is Derrick Gatlin. This is the oral history for the WellsBuilt Hotel. Interview number 3, Mr. Knapp Ford. How you doing today, sir?
Fine, and you?
I'm okay. Okay. For starters, how long have you lived in Orlando?
Well, I was born here 70 years ago, and I've lived here all of my life except when I was away in college and in the military.
Okay. Could you describe the racial makeup of the city as you were growing up?
It has always been predominantly white. It was about, I guess, about 8 to 10% black when I was growing up, and it's changed somewhat over the years. It has increased in population, but I don't know the exact mix now of whites, blacks, and what have you. We have such a diverse community now.
Okay. I'm aware that in certain decades in this country, blacks weren't allowed to go in certain areas. Could you describe the race relations during your days of growing up?
Well, I'm not quite sure how to describe that term, race relations. It was very strict de jure segregation,
Okay.
and there were certain laws, and then there were certain customs which had no basis in law that had to be observed by blacks, and when you did not observe those, you suffered the consequences, whether that was a jailing, a physical attack by police or other white citizens or what have you. It was a terrible time in human relations in the 30s, 40s, and 50s in this town.
Could you give me some of those non-law customs?
There were signs everywhere you went that said whites only.
Mm-hmm.
And there were, most places had 3 restrooms. One said white ladies, one said white men, and the third one said colored, as if black people were all of the same gender. The water fountains had signs, colored and white, and that's interesting because water is colorless, odorless and tasteless. And so it was a bunch of nonsense that existed, that people still try to perpetuate today with fancy language and so forth, but it was denial and privilege, both denial and privilege based on group belonging.
Okay. Did you or do you observe that race relations have gotten better in this city over the years?
I don't use those kinds of terms, better or worse or whatever, until people are respected because they are, number one, members of the human family, number two, citizens. Then I don't like to talk about a degree because there's no degree of being human. Either you're considered human or you are not. And I find it very interesting that the responsibilities of citizenship are always imposed upon you. If you don't pay your taxes, Uncle Sam will come see you. Black, white, or any shade between, male, female, or confused, or whatever. If you don't pay your taxes, Uncle Sam will come see you. I went and served 4 years in the military of this country when I could not even vote back home. When I was a kid growing up in this town in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, the elections were advertised as the white man's Democratic primary. Now, I don't say that with rancor or bitterness or anything, but just as a historical statement of fact, things that I saw with my own eyes. Big placards on posters on telephone poles and so forth, which said the white man's Democratic primary. Nobody voted but white males, and yet for 17 and a half years I have sat as an elected official in a city where my parents never voted. And I don't say that to brag on myself, but that is an indication of the kind of change that is going to constantly be going on until we reach the point where people are simply respected as members of the human family, and their citizenship rights are extended as well as their citizenship privilege being imposed.
Okay. You're currently an elected official?
Yes.
Okay, we'll have a couple more questions for you dealing with that.
Okay.
But before that, I want you to give me your earliest memories of the WellsBuilt Hotel.
Well, first of all, I don't know if anyone has said it, but it was built by a doctor whose name was Wells, and so that's the name of the hotel, WellsBuilt. And when I got old enough, in the mid-40s, I finished high school at 17 in 1945, and a year or two before that, I was allowed to socialize a little bit at night. And the WellsBuilt Hotel was a place that housed traveling black entertainers. The entertainment industry has always been such that entertainers who take their product to the public have always needed a place to live. And right next to the WellsBuilt was a place known as the South Street Casino. And that's where the entertainment took place, entertainment of various sorts. And the entertainers would live there, and there was another hotel around the corner on Terry Street between Jackson and Church called the Florida Hotel, which has now been demolished. And of course, this again was during the days of strict de jure segregation, so blacks were not welcome in hotels and establishments owned by and catering to whites. And so the WellsBuilt is a place where the entertainers lived whenever they came to town, athletes and musicians primarily.
Okay, you spoke of those entertainers. Could you tell me some of the names of those?
Oh
people
yes,
that
I
came
remember
through?
very well. The musicians, it was the era of the big bands, and there are a lot of bands that people have probably never heard of that were filled with very excellent musicians. Buddy Johnson, whose sister Ella Johnson sang with his band, and he was from, I later found out, Darlington, South Carolina, because that's where I went to school, in the state of South Carolina. There was a very famous band headed by a trumpet player named Erskine Hawkins, and a group of young college guys out of Alabama State College in Montgomery had a band in college, and they were so good they just went on the road playing professionally. They came through here. Jimmy Lunsford, very, very famous band. And a lot of people don't remember or don't know that there was an all-female band called the International Sweethearts of Rhythm, headed by Jimmy Lunsford's sister named Jane Lunsford. And of course, the two probably best known bands headed by blacks and staffed with blacks during that era were Duke Ellington and Count Basie. And all of them came to the South Street Casino from time to time, and they would live in the WellsBuilt Hotel and in the Florida Hotel. A lot of great athletes. I was born and raised in a house 1 block from what is now Carter Street Park, and so I was fortunate to see some great ball players in what was called the Negro Leagues. The Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, and Buck Leonard, and those guys. The Homestead Grays, the Kansas City Monarchs, the Newark Eagles, owned by a black woman named F.A. Manley. And I saw a lot of those ball players. Jackie Robinson played with the Kansas City Monarchs before Branch Rickey signed him into white organized baseball. And whenever they came to town, they stayed, most of the ball clubs trained here during the spring, and then they would barnstorm through, heading back to where they played the regular season, and they would stay at the casino until they left. And so I would go down to the ballpark, which was 1 block from where I lived as a youngster, and shag balls and whatever. That piqued my interest in baseball, as well as the bands piquing my interest in music. And so it was just a great time, and not realizing how restricted they were in their movements. This is what you saw, and this is what you aspired to be as a youngster. Some great role models, some tremendous athletes. I say this without rancor, but I have no respect for any major league records that were set before Jackie Robinson got into the majors, because as great as he was, by far and away, he was not nearly the best ball player, but he was the best combination for what Branch Rickey needed in terms of his temperament, college trained, and what have you, to break that barrier.
Okay. Excuse me. Okay. Did you ever visit the hotel?
Yes, I've been to the hotel.
You visited the
many times,
hotel?
Yeah.
Could you give me some of your excuse me, memories of your visits to the hotel?
Well, yes, the living quarters were upstairs in the hotel, and they were very well kept rooms and so forth. And downstairs was always a restaurant slant bar type of operation where food was sold, full dinners, sandwiches, cold drinks, soft drinks, and then beer and wine were sold. And so after I came of age, I would frequent the place, because whenever a band or a team or anything would happen to be there, being a player on the local team, I would go and mingle with some of them. And so I had occasion to go both upstairs and downstairs, mingle with some of the athletes, and on occasion, on a rare occasion, one or two of the musicians. We had a local fellow here that I grew up with named Harold Minerve, who wound up playing alto saxophone in Buddy Johnson's band, and we had a neighborhood band ourselves. Each of us got together and finagle our parents into getting us different musical instruments, so that we formed a band. And we had a teacher who taught chemistry at the high school, which is also a musician, named Mr. Samuel Smith. And so he taught us. Jones High did not have an official band at the time, but he taught us how to play several of those musical instruments. And so we had a little band ourselves, and so that was our interest, athletics and music. And I might add, it was something that kept us out of a lot of kinds of trouble that young people are getting in today.
Yeah, I definitely believe that.
Yes.
Okay. How was the hotel viewed as far as did people view it as beautiful, or how was it laid out? You know what I'm saying, as far as decorations or things of that nature.
When you consider that Blacksburg is restricted in the only way you got inside, there were two major hotels and three major hotels in Orlando then that catered to whites, white-owned. One was called the San Juan Hotel, one was called the WellsBuilt Hotel, and one was called the Orange Court. And the only way you got in there was with a waiter's coat or a maid's dress or chef's apron on. And so most people had not seen anything but the WellsBuilt. Now, I assure you, it was well kept, it was clean, and for the time that it existed, it was well furnished and whatever. So it was viewed as a very nice place. It was viewed very positively in the community, especially since it housed so many blacks who were very well known to blacks in Orlando. So it had a very positive image, both the casino and the hotel. The casino was a center of great entertainment for blacks on a national level. And so the hotel that housed these people, of course, was viewed very positively also.
Okay. Could you recall any specialized activities or events held there for any segment of people, such as women's groups, fraternities, or churches?
Yes, I would see various groups there, but they would meet in the casino and whatever. But I don't recall. There were some were fraternal. I assume some were various types of lodges and so forth. But I don't recall any specific names that met during those times, but I would always see men and women in various regalia, various types of uniforms and so forth. So it was various types of organizations, but it was a meeting place.
Was there
and as people came from out of town for these conferences and these meetings, of course, they lived at the Florida Hotel and the WellsBuilt Hotel, and the meetings would convene in the casino.
Was there an annual event that the WellsBuilt was known for, such as some kind of festival or anything of that nature that the WellsBuilt was known for?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay.
It was just a regular schedule of entertainment events centering around music and athletics.
Okay.
And cultural entertainment. I'm sure there must have been some educational activities going on, because Dr. Wells And there was a circle of black professionals, educators and physicians and dentists, and I'm sure they held meetings there from time to time. I just can't recall any specific ones.
Okay. Before I get to that, what was the reaction in the community when the hotel was closed or when it was about to close?
Well, it was a sort of sadness and a lot of nostalgia, and you understand that in what we call social integration, when blacks started to get access to public accommodations, a lot of black businesses suffered. There were several establishments that served food in the area. It was a self-contained area between what is now, roughly Gore Street and Church Street, and that's north to south, and Orange Blossom Trail to what is now Interstate 4. There were 3 full pharmacies, drugstores, each with a pharmacist, a registered pharmacist, a black registered pharmacist. One on the corner of Paramore and Carter with a Dr. Beverly as the pharmacist. One where Hurley's Florist is now on the corner of South and Paramore, owned by Dr. Hankins. That building was built and owned by the late Dr. Isidore Hankins. And the woman, it was a black woman pharmacist there named Dr. Jones. And there was a Dr. Williams that had a pharmacy and a drugstore up on Church Street across from what was the old Lincoln Theater. So there were a lot of establishments there. But as we got what was called social integration and blacks got access to accommodations outside of the area, many of the establishments in the area suffered because integration was a one-way street. Blacks went to white places to spend money, but whites rarely came into the heart of a black business community to spend money.
Okay, and community-wide, were there any movements to keep the hotel open?
I don't recall any. It just it closed because of a lack of use when blacks got to where they could attend the whole functions in other places with larger facilities and so forth. It just suffered attrition from the attrition of blacks going to those kinds of places, but I don't recall any organized movements to save it. I'm happy to see this movement trying to restore it because it represents history. Real estate is history in a different form than usual.
Okay. As a politician, what role are you playing or have you played in historic preservation inside the city?
Well, I have tried to take to the council that contrary to popular belief, blacks also have some historic buildings and some history in Orlando. I would like to see the home in which Dr. Wells lived, which is one block from where this building is, declared an historic archive if it's not already. And it needs to be refurbished and restored. And when you get historic declaration, that gives you a lot of perks and privileges. It will not be torn down for freeways and expressways and what have you. So I have tried to point up to people who simply don't know much about or anything at all about the history of blacks in Orlando, and especially as it relates to the real estate in which a lot of those historical events took place. And so I've tried to be in the vanguard of doing that and also accessing any funds that are available to preserve, to restore and preserve these buildings. That's why I'm very pleased that Ms. Thompson invited me to take part in this, hopefully this restoration of the WellsBuilt. It's a very, very key landmark, and I would very much hate to see it destroyed. I was really disappointed that the old Jones High School had to be destroyed, but it had sat in the weather for 13 years, boarded up, and structurally it just could not be saved. But we did save the facade and put into place a center called the Callahan Center, which is named after a black physician, Dr. J.B. Callahan, who lived in Orlando during the time we're talking about now. And so at least that much of the history of that area is preserved. But the building, the old Jones High School building, went by the wayside. That is where I went to high school, and I had a very aside from the historical importance of it, I had a personal stake in it. So I've tried to be about preserving that and giving our children a sense of history as it relates to what our experience has been here in America and in Florida and in Orlando. That's very important, because that old saying is true, that people who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it.
Okay. How was Dr. Wells received in the community?
Oh, very well, very well. He was a gregarious, outgoing type of person, and he was respected for not so much for the status of being a physician, but as an educated, learned man who had the common touch, who never seemed to, in his own evaluation of himself, place himself above the people that he dealt with on a daily basis. And he put into place the casino and the WellsBuilt Hotel, which were very important to the practice of the cultural aspects of blacks during those times. So he was very well received.
Okay, do you know when he came to Orlando?
No, I don't. Because I don't remember when I did not know that he was here. So he was here from the time that I could remember, yes.
Okay. And other than the hotel, what other activities or companies was Dr. Wells involved in the community?
Dr. Wells and some of the other physicians and dentists had an organization. Dr. Hankins tried to he despaired of the treatment of blacks at what is now Orlando Regional Medical Center, then called Orange Memorial Hospital, and black patients were kept in the basement, which was really not constructed for patients at all. There were open steam pipes and so forth running through the basement, and so Dr. Hankins tried to, along with Dr. Wells, tried to establish a hospital to get the other physicians to go in. They were unsuccessful in doing it, for what reason I don't know, but Dr. Hankins did put up his pharmacy, and later on Dr. Smith came and he established a maternity facility just across the street from Dr. Hankins' place. But they were all about trying to improve the general quality of life for blacks, given the tenor of the times and the strict de jure segregation that existed.
Okay. Community, what? You said Dr. Wells was very respected, but did he face a lot of resistance from the blacks in the community or from the establishment outside of the community?
The resistance to what he was trying to do came primarily from whites. I remember what is now called the Great Southern Music Hall used to be a theater called the Beecham Theater, and I remember Dr. Wells being arrested for trying to enter the theater with his wife. So he was a man who was not afraid to exercise what he saw as his rights as a citizen, and he was highly respected for that. He, Dr. Hankins, and the rest of the physicians, they were able to do these kinds of things because they made their living independent of the white power structure. If you made your living, if the white power structure controlled the way you made your living, such as educators and so forth, then you dare not speak out, or you were economically cut off. But of course, all of their patients were black, and so they made their living completely independent of the white financial power structure, so they were able to express themselves in that fashion, and they were highly respected for it.
Okay. Do you know when Dr. Wells died?
No, I can't recall the year.
Okay. As far as the WellsBuilt Hotel is concerned, as far as the environment outside or inside, were there a lot of, was any fighting or any negative things going on that would cause a negative light to be shed on the hotel? Was it relatively peaceful?
Of course there were fights. Wherever you have people gathering, right, they're going to be race aside. There are going to be disagreements, especially if alcohol and females are involved, male-female relationships and so forth. You have those things. They occurred in the casino, they occurred in the WellsBuilt. But overall, it was far more positive interaction than negative interaction. Of course, you had a few fights, you had a few disturbances, you had a few people who have had to be ejected and so forth from the hotel and from the casino. That's to be expected. That's a part of human behavior, but not enough to cast any kind of a pall over the place. No, it was a place of great cultural activity and a place of gathering that blacks appreciated very much.
Okay, and finally, could you give me, to the best of your recollection, some fond memories or otherwise of the hotel, of the WellsBuilt Hotel?
Well, the memories I have are of the hotel and the casino, and the great entertainers that I saw there, especially the musicians. I had a musical instrument which I was learning to play, and of course it takes a lot longer to master a musical instrument than it does athletic activity. And it also turned out that I happened to be a pretty good athlete, which was a good thing for me because that was the way I went to college on football and baseball scholarship. But I have the memory of seeing musical giants at the South Street Casino. I saw Duke Ellington and Count Basie and Jimmy Lunsford and his band. And in later years, before the casino burned down, I saw so-called modern-day jazz musicians like Jimmy Smith and all the rest of those. So I have the fondest kind of memories of coming of age and becoming aware of that aspect of our culture, which I think is very beautiful, the musical aspect. And of course, people have tried to stereotype that and talk about it. You know, all black folks have rhythm, and I wish I had $1 for every black kid I taught physical ed who had 2 left feet and 9 thumbs. But that aspect of our culture is extremely preserved, and it was beautiful. And what makes me know that it was so valuable is that so many people have made great livings doing poor imitations of it. I recall that when an entertainer named Bert Williams, a brilliant satirist, singer, comedian, whatever, could not get work anywhere, Al Jolson and what's the other guy named? Al Jolson and Eddie Cantor became multimillionaires painting their face black and singing Mammy. And Bert Williams couldn't get a job anywhere. So I have fond memories of seeing those kinds of entertainers up close and in person. And so I knew of the fallacy of the movies and during those days where blacks were cast in stereotypical type movies and whatever. I knew that was a bunch of garbage. You know, I was fortunate enough to have seen the real thing up close, and I'm not trying to say to you that blacks are any better or any worse than anyone else, you know, but I'm saying that the stereotypes have all been negative, and I was fortunate enough to see the other side during my most impressionable years. And that's been very helpful to me, and always feeling good about who I am and not having a need to put anyone else down.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
You're
You've been
quite welcome.
extremely helpful.
Thank you.
You have a nice afternoon.
You too.
Okay.
Derrick is in a graduate program